Today is Sunday, June 30th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic, and no, you're not crazy. You're hearing me twice today because we're going to do a personal story. We're going to finish the one that we started a while ago because we are going to read our first personal story in this kind of format where it's all in one single episode. And I figured, you know what? Why not do it on a Sunday? As a matter of fact, if we're getting another set of 24 hours tomorrow, we start all over again with the core text of the Big Book and the 12 and 12. Going right back through it again, July 1st. So I figured to start this week off, we could talk about the personal story that we left off on in our daily reading from the 4th edition. It's in the section, They Lost Nearly All. The story is called Twice Gifted. Today we're going to be reading pages 470 through 475. Story number 5, Twice Gifted. Diagnosed with cirrhosis, this sick alcoholic got sobriety, plus a life-saving liver transplant. Today is Sunday, my favorite day of the week. Things are usually peaceful, and I always get that wonderfully humbling, it's amazing to be alive feeling. I'm happy to say that very few days go by without that feeling. Sunday used to be pretty wild in the old days. That is what I call my drinking days, the old days. It was the last day of the weekend, finishing up a few days of partying with my friends. I never went anywhere that was not a party. And if in doubt about the occasion, I think of a good one to bring the party with me. I cannot remember a time without booze in my life. Even when I was young and didn't drink myself, liquor was always around. I do remember a time at the beginning of my drinking, thinking to myself that I was not or would never become an alcoholic, knowing in a very personal way exactly how an alcoholic lived. I was a teenager then, and I figured I was just having fun and could control everything about my drinking. By the time I actually reached legal drinking age, I had definitely gone beyond weekend party drinking. And Sunday once again became the first day of the week, soon to become a week of daily drinking. During my young adulthood, drinking was the way I related to others. I did not know anyone who did not drink, and all of my interests, friendships, and more intimate relationships revolved completely around my drinking. Over the years, by all appearances, I grew up and got a life, but it was only a facade. I never did mature other than in the physical way. I appeared normal on the outside. I knew I drank and so did everyone else, but I behaved pretty well and, only by chance, managed to stay out of harm's way, except for a few occasions. Looking back now, the picture of my life before I got sober looks like a long series of unfinished matters. Through the years, I had quit on everything that ever mattered. College, going for promotions, relationships, at least the relationships that meant any work. Then a few things began to change. Some years before I finally gave up drinking, my body started to give me signals that continuing on this course might not be as carefree as it had seemed up to that point. When stomach troubles began, I visited a doctor, and when queried about my drinking habits, I glossed over the idea that I overindulged. Tests were run, but no real diagnosis was ever confirmed. I was advised to maintain a healthy diet and watch the alcohol intake, along with other prudent suggestions from the doctor. I was still young, and I thought to myself that just giving my body a break by slowing down would allow me to bounce back. Over the next few years, I had quite a few episodes of feeling sick, and of course, having never attended to the real problem, my drinking was still escalating. When my symptoms started to multiply, I finally had to consider the real possibility that drinking was the cause of all my health problems. For very brief moments, I somehow realized that giving up the booze was probably in my future. With that realization came fear and so many questions. How will I live? What will I do with my life? Certainly a life without booze meant that I'd not had fun, and surely I would not be fun. Up until the moment I realized I might have to give up drinking, I had believed that I was perfectly happy. I had a fine life, a good job, nice place to live, a car, friends, all the things I thought I needed in life. Ideas of getting help to quit drinking had surfaced, but were fleeting and never grew in anything like reaching out. My health had finally taken a serious turn for the worse. I was frequently unable to get out of bed even to go to work, and strange new problems were exhibiting themselves with regularity. I resolved to divorce myself from the bottle, but trying to stop alone was disastrous. During the dry periods, I was very weak and sick. Then at times I would drink, and it was out of control. I would isolate and binge. Those last drunks ended in episodes of uncontrollable shaking, dry heaves, and even hallucinations. At the end, I was scared and suffering, and I felt as though I were absolutely alone in the world. A series of circumstances brought me to a new doctor. I had to see a doctor because once again I had become fearfully ill, and I was unable to work. My stomach was distended, and my ankles were swollen nearly twice their normal size due to fluid retention. The whites of my eyes had yellowed from jaundice, and I had spidery, broken veins all over my body. My skin itched all over and took on an eerie greenish-gray appearance. My blood had apparently thinned, because the lightest touch would cause a terrible bruise, and even a small scratch would bleed for a very long time. Dark marks appeared on my face and arms. My hair began to fall out, and because I had no appetite at all, I was very weak and extremely fatigued. The new physician took one look at my appearance and my blood test results and asked if I drank. I said that I used to, but had abstained for quite a while. This was a blatant lie. In reality, the only person who was being fooled was me. The new doctor explained that I had a disease called cirrhosis of the liver. How far it had progressed was hard to tell, but by the symptoms I was having and the results of my tests, the disease seemed fairly advanced. The picture he painted was very bleak. As the disease worsened, I would become sicker and weaker, and finally there would be a slow and painful progression, usually ending in a fatal episode of bleeding into the stomach, or lapsing into a coma and death. With that, he referred me to a special clinic. Not an ordinary group of doctors, but a liver transplant clinic. The initial interview with this group of doctors made it clear that if I wanted to live, I was going to have to prove that alcohol was no longer going to be the part of my life. I was 37 years old at the time, a relatively young woman for what was happening to my body. I was suddenly very afraid of dying, and I was desperate. I had attended AA meetings prior to that time, but the words of the doctors had somehow finally begun to clear the way. At the meeting that first night, more of what people in AA were saying started to pass through my ears, and into my head, and finally into my heart. The members of Alcoholics Anonymous offered me a gift of life. I found myself willing, and after some weeks of just showing up, I began to believe that this program could work for me. The next 6 months were spent in AA meetings every single day, at least one, sometimes 2 or 3. I found a wonderful patient sponsor who helped me work the steps and practice the principles. During the 6 months of evaluation by the clinic, I was given a blood test at least weekly, sometimes randomly, to validate that I was not drinking. I had weekly meetings with the psychiatrists on the transplant team. My family members attended some of those meetings, and the doctors also had contact with my sponsor. Another mandate was that I enter some type of psychotherapy with a professional, either group or individual sessions. This too was not something I would have chosen for myself, but it has turned out to be a very positive force in my life. At the time of the evaluation, there had to be evidence that I was doing everything possible to assure my continued sobriety. After a 6-month period, I was officially listed as a candidate for a liver transplant. By the time my name was placed on the transplant waiting list, I had become very sick. My liver had progressively continued to shut down, and the official wait had really just begun. I had no way of knowing how long it would be before a suitable organ would become available, or how long it would be before I rose to the top of the list. At times I felt resentful of the selection process, the tests, the close supervision of my AA program, and the seemingly endless wait. Unquestionably, It was only because of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was able to let go of that resentment. I actually found an abundance of peace and serenity during those months preceding the surgery. After another 6 months, I was given a chance and a second gift of life. The surgery itself was a wonderful process, and my recuperation was unmarked by setbacks. Some years have passed, and as I look back from the clarity of this moment, I know that the way here for me could not have been by an easier path. I would not willingly have stepped on the course my life was on. I needed harsh reality to see the damage that alcohol abuse causes in so many ways. I needed to be forced into acceptance and humility. My physical being has certainly undergone a transformation, but the major transformation has been spiritual. The hopelessness has been replaced by abundant hope and sincere faith. The people of Alcoholics Anonymous have provided a haven where, if I remain aware and keep my mind quiet enough, my higher power leads me to amazing realizations. I find joy in my daily life, in being of service, in simply being. I have found rooms full of wonderful people, and for me, each and every one of the Big Book's promises have come true. The things that I have learned from my own experience, from the Big Book, and from my friends in AA, patience, acceptance, honesty, humility, and true faith in a power greater than myself, are the tools I use today to live my life. This precious life. Today, my life is filled with miracles big and small, not one of which would ever have come to pass had I not found the door of Alcoholics Anonymous. Wow. Powerful stuff. You know, I love on page 475, literally, her health is failing, and she says, after another 6 months, I was given a second chance and a second gift of life. That's much like me in sobriety. You know I didn't need a liver transplant necessarily, but I've been given a new life. I really think about my life into two parts. My life before sobriety and my life now. It's like two different lifetimes, you know. I think the Big Book says that somewhere, that we've lived two different lives. And I love what she says here. What a humble statement. She says, I know the way the path for me could not have been by an easier path. I would not willingly have stopped on the course of my life was on. I needed harsh reality to see the damage that alcohol abuse causes in so many ways. I know folks that have suffered an alcoholic death. It is a painful, extremely painful way to go. And it's hard to witness that. And she went through that pain, not knowing if she was going to make it. But during that process, she went to AA, 3-4 times a day for days and days. 6 months, as a matter of fact, on 474. And she continues to go because of so many things that she's gained. This second to last paragraph, I'll say this and I'll shut up after this. All the things that she's received here. Things I learned from my own experience, the Big Book, the fellowship, and from my friends in AA. Patience, acceptance, honesty, humility, and true faith in a power greater than myself are the tools I use today to live my life. This precious life. As I've said, sobriety is so much more than just not drinking. And if you, my friend, are sober today, you are a miracle. If we're given a brand new set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow.